Hey, it's Julie Condliffe here. Thank you so very much for joining me again today on the Creative Legal's Property Investment Lawyers platform. A property investment platform where we hold your hand every step of your investment journey. If you want to succeed in property investment and to stay on the right side of the law, I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to ensure that you are reminded every time we post another video to help you. So you found the property that you want to buy, you're ready, you're happy, let's go. Let's discuss the legal process of buying a property. What is the process? How long does it take? What do lawyers actually do? I will share with you the secrets. I will show you tactical ways of how you can speed up the process, how you can avoid losing your dream home, your dream investment property. I will give you insight into what lawyers do or should do as part of the process. I will share with you how others have lost thousands of pounds in the conveyancing process and how you can avoid that. You will know the type of searches that are involved and what they reveal. As a property solicitor who has been doing property for over 15 years, I have got the professional experience and expertise to be able to help guide you. As a property investor, I also have the personal and practical experience to be able to guide you in your property investment journey. So I'm sure you'll agree that I am qualified to talk you through the lawyer's side of the story. Ordinarily, by the time a buyer or indeed a seller approaches a solicitor, an offer would have been made and accepted. So the seller would have put the property on the market, the buyer would have found a property or the property, would have made an offer, and the offer would have been accepted. As a lawyer, what I would do first is your due diligence. I've got a whole separate recording on that subject matter, so do feel free to utilize that recording. In essence, we establish that you are who you say you are. If you're selling, we verify that the property is legally yours to sell. Here is a real life story that will help you see how important this actually is. A company called Dreamvar thought it was purchasing a property from a particular legitimate seller. Little did it know that the seller was somebody who'd just managed to obtain both the driving and TV license of the true owner, got them certified by a solicitor, and masqueraded as being the legitimate seller. It was only after the buyers had transferred the money for the property that they discovered that they'd been defrauded and the money was gone. And at that point, surely it's quite late in the day, is it not? That is why I say what you do not know could cost you. This happens a lot. I hope this helps you understand why we do the checks that we do. It is a legal requirement to safeguard your transaction, and failing to provide that information in a timely manner will only slow down the transaction. And I know most of us want our transactions to be faster, smarter, smoother, and better. I get that. And as a business, Creative Legals, we pride ourselves in doing things faster, smarter, and better. But if this information is not provided, how then do you help expedite the process? How then do you help your solicitors? So it is incumbent upon you to provide this information to assist in speeding up the transaction. In addition to being able to prove you are who you say you are, you must also demonstrate where the money is coming from. So where are the funds for your purchase coming from. We as your solicitors want to ascertain the source of funds. We want to know that money is coming from a legitimate source. The money could come from the sale of another property. It could come from your savings. It could come from an inheritance or a financial gift from family or friends. Whatever the source, simply prove it. Prove where it came from. It may be that part of the deposit is a gift, and the person gifting you the money will just simply have to demonstrate where they got that money from. So for example, if you're using the bank of mum and dad, your mum, your dad, or your mum and your dad will simply need to confirm the amount of the gift and how that money was obtained. It's simple enough. It just simply needs to be done. So the seller wants the transaction to go faster. The buyer wants the transaction to go faster. The estate agent wants the transaction to go faster. The mortgage advisor wants the transaction to go faster. All the parties want the transaction to go faster, and we are all part of the same team. So if everybody does what they are supposed to do, then the transaction is expedited. It is that simple. So let's get it done. Just a bit of forward planning goes a long way in property transactions. Being prepared increases your chances of a seamless, stressless, smooth transaction. So let us get the documentation together before it is even requested. So some of the things that you can put together prior could be your identity documentation. So this could be a passport or a driving license. I've provided you with a list of all the official acceptable identification documents in the description. You also need your proof of address, so put that together. Things such as your driving license, bank statement, or a utility bill dated within the last 3 months should suffice. And again, I've provided you with a list in the description. Hopefully you find that helpful. We discussed the need of proof of the source of funds. This could be your payslips, last 3 months payslips, put them together. It could be a P60 from your employer, get that. It could be your tax return or other documentation if you're self-employed. If your money is coming from perhaps an inheritance, you will need evidence from the executors of the estate. So start processing that. If you've got money coming from a family member, then you need a letter from them confirming that the money is a gifted deposit. So maybe you want to get that, and the letter will stipulate that they don't want the money back, that they haven't got no rights over the property because it's a gift. So again, that is something that you can put together. I hope you found it helpful. Nothing personal. It's simply part of the process. The next step in the process is that the solicitors acting for the seller will issue a contract pack to the buyer's solicitors. That contract pack will include things such as your draft contract, title deeds in the form of HM Land Registry official copies, your property information form, leasehold information form if the property is leasehold, and that's normally flats. Obviously it's not limited to flats, but it normally is. You've also got the fittings and contents form, any relevant planning documentation and guarantees. If you are a seller and want to speed up the conveyancing process, then it is critical that you instruct your solicitors as quickly as possible. Creative legals do it faster, smarter and better, so I'm sure you would want to instruct me. You would want to instruct our team to handle that for you if you want it to be done faster, smarter and in a better way. Please do complete all the solicitor's requirements in relation to the client care paperwork and the money laundering processes. Please do comply with all your solicitor's requirements in relation to the client care paperwork and their money laundering processes. This will just help speed up the process for you. It really would be in your best interest to prepare and complete all the property forms at the earliest possible opportunity, because the lawyers who are acting for your buyer, they will not start work until these documents are received. So that's one of the reasons why some of the transactions don't go as fast as we would want them to. Once the buyer has instructed a solicitor for the conveyancing, the buyer solicitors will receive from the seller solicitors the contract pack. Once the buyer solicitors have done their due diligence and received the contract pack, the first thing they'll do is to undertake searches in relation to the property. I do a complete recording on the searches, so do feel free to utilize that particular recording. I will provide you a link in the description. The documentation received from the seller is to give the buyer full disclosure of all matters affecting the property. So part of our job as the buyer solicitor is to ensure that those disclosures are correct, and any additional inquiries that you perhaps want us to raise will also be raised on your behalf. So it is quite an important part of what we do. If you as a buyer want to speed up the conveyancing process, then it's absolutely vital that you've completed everything that your solicitors need. You've put them in funds for them to be able to order the searches. So if you get that done, that helps a lot. I say this primarily because the searches take the longest time in the process. They could take up to 3 weeks, dependent on the type of searches, the company used, and the location of the property. If you're buying with the aid of a mortgage, that could delay matters as well. So make sure that you've got that sorted in early course. But not just that. If you are buying with a mortgage, this stage is unavoidable, as it is a prerequisite of most, if not all, lenders. If you are a cash buyer, there could be ways around it. You may be able to obtain an indemnity policy in certain circumstances. So dealing with the solicitor's inquiries and documentation in early course will allow your solicitors to investigate the title fully for you and collate any ancillary documentation that may be required way ahead of time. The searches that the buyer solicitors carry out will include a local search and a drainage search. Additionally, the buyers will undertake other searches, environmental search, chance or liability search, and other location relevant searches, which, as I said, is all detailed in a separate recording. When the buyer solicitors have received all the search results back, they will go through these papers with a fine-tooth comb. Hopefully at this stage you would have liaised with your mortgage advisor and a mortgage offer will be in place. If a mortgage offer isn't in place, then really please do liaise with your advisor and get it in as quickly as possible to avoid delaying the process. Exchange of contracts cannot take place until the mortgage offer has been received and checked by the buyer solicitors, who then have a duty to send a report on title to the lender confirming that they have carried out all the relevant searches and that they're satisfied that the property has good title. Exchange of contracts cannot take place until the mortgage offer has been received and checked by the buyer solicitors. It may be prudent for the buyer to consider having a survey undertaken at the property. Of course, the buyer could always rely on the valuation report undertaken by the lender, but this is just a valuation. It is not a full survey. So there are two primary types of surveys that can be carried out. You've got your structural survey And then you've got your home buyers survey. For most buyers, a home buyer survey will be sufficient, as this highlights any major or significant problems with the property that require urgent attention. These problems could be damp, timber infestation, maybe problems with the roof, so matters such as those. It is important for the buyer to be aware of these problems before exchange of contracts, as it may result in the lender requiring a retention, it may result in reduction of the purchase price, it may result in requiring the seller to undertake works prior to completion. So it is important that a survey is carried out, but like I said, a valuation could suffice. So whilst we're waiting for the search results to come back, we normally utilize that time to deduce title. This includes checking the title documentation to ensure that the seller has the requisite right to sell the property to you. We also check to ensure that the correct property is being sold, as it's been known that the wrong property has been conveyed before the wrong property has been sold. Somebody thought they were buying something else. So these things actually happen in real life. So those are some of the checks that we as your solicitors ought to do. We also check the plan and ask you to verify its accuracy, as we rarely attend site. We don't tend to carry out inspections of the property that you're buying. So to a degree, we will also rely on what you tell us. We will review the property information forms and all the other documentation provided. We will then raise relevant inquiries both on title and anything else that you bring to our attention. So if you've got any concerns or if you've got any questions at all, always feel free to ask us, because by doing that you are alerting us to things that perhaps we wouldn't have known about. So never think too many questions to ask your legal representatives. We are here for you. We are here to act for you. So feel free to ask. An important point that I'd like to highlight is that generally your solicitor will have two clients. So we act for you as the buyer, but we also act for your lender. So you will need to be mindful of that. We will need to be satisfied in our own minds that the inquiries that we've raised have been dealt with in order to give satisfactory certificates of title to the lender. Sometimes clients want you to take a view on something, but we may not be able to do that because we are also guided by the requirements of the lender. So sometimes that can complicate matters slightly dependent on the issue, because we've got strict guidance based on the Council of Mortgage Lenders and loads of other guidance that you must adhere to. If you are a cash buyer, we can look at things differently for you because we act on instructions. So there are matters where we can actually take a view on things. So we also go through the fixtures and fittings form, which is included as part of the contract package. It is assumed that in completing this form, the seller would have gone round the house with a tick box detailing all the items that they are willing to sell and any other additional ones. They normally put a suggested price against those items. You don't have an obligation to agree to those, but you must clearly set out your position. Any items that are not included will be removed from the property prior to completion. So you need to double check to ensure that you are buying what you intend to buy. So once we've checked these forms, we send them to you as part of our detailed report, and then we point out any matters in the title, in the documentation, any matters that are of concern to us. These matters could be things like the rights you have, rights of access, rights of whatever it is, or rights that you do not have. So it is imperative for you to go through the documentation that we send you, agree, disagree, raise questions. It is your opportunity to ensure that you are getting the deal that you bargained for. Once the buyer and the seller are happy, the buyer solicitors are happy, the seller solicitors are also happy to exchange contracts contracts can then be exchanged. When exchanging contracts, or indeed before exchange of contracts, we will set a firm completion date, which is generally a week, sometimes 14 days after exchange. This allows us time to draw down the mortgage funds from your lender, and it also gives you an ample opportunity to make your removal arrangements. The difference between exchange of contracts and completion is that at exchange of contracts, identical contracts are exchanged between both parties' solicitors. It is the stage where the transaction becomes legally binding. So whatever it is we need to ask, whatever it is we need to find out, and let us do that before exchange of contract, because once we've exchanged contracts, we are in a legally binding agreement and there's very little or no legroom at all. Completion is effectively the moving day, the day in which the buyer takes possession of the property. So you get your keys and you move into the property if you're moving in. If it's your investment property, you get the keys and then you do whatever you need to do. But the contract is substantially concluded at that point. Completion date is set at exchange of contract stage. So what happens if completion doesn't take place on the agreed completion date and exchange of contracts has been effected? Well, okay, you could lose the deposit and you could also lose the property. The defaulting party would be in breach of the contractual terms and would therefore be liable to the other party for damages. The damages could include contractual interest and reasonable damages under common law remedies. The damages can include things like your storage costs, removal costs, and damages from other transactions in the chain, if there is a chain here. So there's quite a lot that's involved here. That's why we need to make sure that before exchange of contracts, we are ready, willing and able to complete. We are ready to complete. We've got our house in order. So some of the pre-contract searches that we do to protect your position include, as I said, the local authority searches. The local authority search is to ensure that planning permissions have been granted for any extensions you may have seen at the property. So if you've seen any extensions, you may want to alert us to those, and then we will do our own digging to ensure that whatever planning permissions may have been required would have been granted. The drainage searches, we do those to make sure that the property is connected to the mains. We do environmental searches to ensure that there's nothing unpleasant in the immediate neighborhood of the property. We do a chancel search to ensure that you're not responsible for repairing the local chancel. A 10% deposit is payable on exchange. That could be reduced to 5% or whatever other percentage as the parties may agree, but 5% would be the norm if one is not paying the full 10%. What you also need to be mindful of here is if there's a breach of contract later on, if you've paid the lesser amount, the lesser percentage, 5% or whatever percentage you may have paid, the full 10% becomes due. As a buyer, you may also want to ensure that you insure the property from exchange of contracts, because you don't want a scenario where the property is damaged significantly between exchange and completion, but you will still have an obligation to proceed to completion. You don't want to end up buying a pile of rubble, ruin. You don't want to do that. So you want to make sure that you insure the property from exchange of contracts. You don't want a scenario where you exchange contracts and something drastic, something tragic happens and the property is damaged, is severely dilapidated, and you still have to proceed with the completion because you're contractually obliged to do so. If you've got insurance, that could help mitigate your losses in the event that that happens, which is unlikely, but these things do happen from time to time. On and post completion, we will then be responsible for paying the stamp duty, land tax, registering the transfer and any mortgage at the land registry. So it's important to get the right solicitors. It's important to engage with your solicitors. Conveyancing is interesting, but it can also be challenging. There are many things that we could do to ease the process. There are many things that we can do to make the process run quicker and smoother. So until next time.